And we're back. It's that time of the year again. The NFL season kicks off tomorrow night. Cowboys versus Eagles. And then Friday, we got a big matchup to start the season off. Kansas City Chiefs against the Chargers randomly in Brazil. I don't understand why we're playing a game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but nevertheless, football's back. Super excited for this season. I think this is going to be a very interesting season. I think we're going to have a lot of teams that have improved and are going to be fighting in the middle of the pack. I really think the hunt at the end of the year is going to be a dogfight. I think we're in for a very exciting and unpredictable year, if you could believe that, considering I feel like the last, I don't know, 5-ish years or so, the NFL's been pretty unpredictable at times. But I'm interested to see how these teams fare after they've gone about building their teams up. And as you know, every year, the past handful of years, I've done my power rankings. So let's kick it off. 2025 to 2026 power rankings. As a disclaimer, this is my power rankings to start the year are always a combination of where I truly think a team is at, and sometimes a little bit of a projection. If I think a team has the potential to be a little bit better or worse, it kind of will affect, where I place these teams a tad. But, it's mostly solely based off how good I really truly think the team is now. And I'll elaborate based on, where I think these teams can go. Obviously, I always put my floors and ceilings, but let's kick it off. To start it off, number 32, the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints, they're not going to be that great this year. Their head coach is Kellen Moore. Biggest strengths, really, they don't really have any strengths. Their biggest weakness is cap and, lack of talent. And overall, they got a lot of aging players that they've spent a lot of money on, have a lot of money tied up into. Their best offensive players are Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. Best defensive players, most of them are getting old, but Demario Davis, still man's the center of that defense, gets a lot of tackles, things of that nature. The X Factor, essentially the X Factor in these videos are going to be kind of like not always like the player that's going to help a team or be the linchpin. It could be, just a factor that's going to really define the team. But for the Saints, the Saints could steal some games for people if all their skilled position players are healthy and, making plays. Early last year they came on strong, scoring a lot of points. But with this roster, it's not really that consistent. They got Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Shaheed, they line him up all over the field and he can make some plays. But I think this team has the possibility of actually not winning a single game this year. If you look at their schedule, only 3 teams have gone, 0 and whatever throughout the entirety of the NFL. So the likelihood of it happening is small. But when I initially looked at their schedule, I was like, damn, this team could possibly not win a game. Obviously, they're embroiled in a quarterback battle between Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler, neither of them are really all that good. It looks like they're going to start Rattler to start the year. I'm pretty sure the head coach, this is rookie year. Kellen Moore has a lot of experience as an offensive coordinator. Interested to see how he does. Saints 32. Number 31, the Cleveland Browns. I struggled with the Cleveland Browns where I wanted to put them because they do actually have a pretty solid roster when they're all healthy. Defensive, tons of defensive players all over the place. Typically, if they're healthy, they have a solid offensive line. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting nothing out of your quarterback position, no matter how good your roster is, it's hard. Kevin Stefanski sporting a sub 500 record as their head coach. I actually think Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, but, it's the Browns. Biggest strength is their defense, particularly their front seven. They have a lot of versatile front seven players, a linebacker and on the edge. Their biggest weakness is their quarterback room. They've been tinkering with 4 quarterbacks all preseason, none of which really push the envelope. There's been a huge debate over, the whole Shedeur Sanders thing. And I thought about making a whole entire different video about, I really think a lot of these pundits just simp for players because they like them and they like to create storylines. They're never really evaluating or being honest with how good players are. Hence this whole Shedeur Sanders saga. If Shedeur Sanders was really that good, he not only would have been picked in the first round, but he'd be starting week 1, not Joe Flacco. they would find that out immediately in practice if he was good enough to start right away. Best offensive player, Jerry Jeudy. Best defensive player, obviously, Myles Garrett. The X factor. Defensive capabilities and versatility, like I said. Ceiling, 5-12 at the most. Floor, 2-15. I think this team could be competitive at times because of their defense and the coaching and the schemes that they run, but it's just they're not going to be very good this year. Cleveland 31. Tennessee Titans. So a lot of people have Tennessee Titans last. I actually think the Tennessee Titans are going to be, a little pretty competitive this year. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they're going to be competitive. Coach Brian Callahan in his second year, biggest strength, defense. Biggest weakness, aging skill players. They need to definitely go out this next offseason and in the draft and try to put weapons around Cam Ward, who's a promising young prospect, obviously the number 1 overall pick. Best offensive player, Calvin Ridley. I spelled his name wrong. What a loser. Best defensive players, Jeffrey Simmons and newly acquired L'Jarius Sneed. The X factors, Cam Ward's skill set and escapability. I really do think Cam Ward's going to be a really good player. Do I think he's going to be like some high-level elite player? That remains to be seen. He's on a team that's bereft of talent, especially on the offensive side of the football. I do think his actual skill set translates to being able to uplift and carry an offense more. As we come into a league where it's very much on offense about putting players, getting them into pace and space and skill sets and matchups. If your quarterback is a playmaker, it's probably the most deadly position because they control every outcome to a degree, the initial phases of starting a play on offense. The ball's in their hands at first. Cam Ward's got above average arm talent, not like high level, but in terms of his ability to put the ball down the field, he's got a pretty good arm. Anticipatory throwing, highly intelligent. He's got escapability, which I think is really going to be a factor. I think he's going to be able to, move and get things done out of the pocket and be sneaky, moving up the field, converting personnel. Similar to how, like, Pat Mahomes uses his escapability. Just lightly extending plays, picking up first downs here and there. I think in a weak division, I think this team could possibly surprise people and go 7-10. But they'll be more likely more towards their floor. They're just not talented enough. 4-13, Tennessee Titans 30. Number 29, the Indianapolis Colts. So I see a lot of people put the Colts as like this middle-of-the-pack team, and I actually think the Colts are going to be fucking awful, and I think Shane Steichen's probably going to be let go after this year. Biggest strengths are their skill positions if they're healthy, but who the hell's throwing them the ball? I mean, I like Pittman's really good. Josh Downs is like a very statistically, deep analytically, and underrated player who can't stay healthy. They just drafted, a really good young tight end. Biggest weakness is going to be their defense, and it's not that they don't have like good defensive players. I feel like they have some good defensive personnel. It's just very leaky and inconsistent. Their best offensive players, sadly, Quentin Nelson, who, I just wish wasn't in Indianapolis. He's such a good player. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, when healthy, is a monster. Best defensive player, newly acquired Charvarius Ward. See how he does, in this defense. Could help it a lot. X factor is really coming down to Anthony Richardson's development and injury status. And, they're supposed we can start Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson's already hurt. And to be honest, it's dope if your quarterback can be a playmaker and run and stuff like that. But guess what? At the end of the day, a lot of these games against high-level teams and big games eventually comes down to, a handful of times you got to be consistent in throwing darts. And Anthony Richardson wasn't even accurate in college. I just never understood them drafting Anthony Richardson. Wasn't that good when he was in college. Wasn't just very inaccurate in all phases of the field. Yeah, I just don't get it. I actually think Daniel Jones is a better quarterback. So ceiling 7-10 possibly because this team does have talent on both sides of the ball. Floor 5-12. In a weak division, who knows? They could go like fucking 8-9 or 9-8 possibly and win this division. This division's awful. It would take the Texans being bad, but Indianapolis, they've just been very mid for a while, and I think this might be the year where, all the pundits get off the Indianapolis train. They always pick them to fall. So people pick them to win the division, and I think they're high. Indianapolis 29. Las Vegas Raiders head coach Pete Carroll. Look at Pete Carroll's record: 170 and 120. Biggest strengths: quarterback, running back, scheme combo. I think the quarterback and the running back 100% fits the scheme in which Pete Carroll likes to implement. Biggest weaknesses is defense and wide receiver overall talent and depth. Best offensive players, Geno Smith and Ashton Jeanty. I think they're going to be a good combination together. Obviously, Max Crosby is an elite edge rusher for them. X factors, obviously Pete Carroll. So this team still has a ways to go in terms of their talent. But Pete Carroll brings a level of energy, even at 70 years old. The players love him. And when Pete Carroll gets the right players with his dink and dunk, run, take deep shots down the field style scheme, like when he had Seattle back in their Super Bowl runs, he knows how to take the right personnel and get a lot out of them. Scheme matters. And, if a lot of these there's a handful of coaches where if they just get the right players, their scheme is effective in the NFL. And Pete Carroll's one of those guys. The big thing for them is, what are they going to get defensively? Because even if they could score points, they're not going to score points at a clip to where they could just, outscore teams. They're going to need their defense to step up. And they're also playing in one of the toughest divisions this year. So ceiling 7-10, floor 5-12, Las Vegas Raiders 28. Number 20. So I tinkered back and forth with this one. The New York teams. I originally had the Giants at 25, but after I went back and reviewed it a couple times and paid attention to the preseason, I brought them back down to 27. And obviously I'll get into it, but 27, the New York Giants. Head coach Brian Daboll, 18-32-1. Biggest strength, obviously, is their front seven. It's one of the best front sevens in the league. Biggest weakness is the totality of their O-line. They have an all-pro Andrew Thomas at left tackle, but the rest of the offensive line, they got some solid young pieces that just haven't lived up to what we thought they were going to be. Best offensive players are Malik Nabers and obviously Andrew Thomas. Best defensive players are Dexter Lawrence and Javon Holland. X factors, the defensive additions, obviously. They went out and bolstered their secondary. I love the players they picked up in the secondary. But secondary is one of those spots where it really needs to really gel as a unit, and they need reps together. So it's going to be interesting to see after they add all these pieces. They're going to not be good offensively again. But I think this team will be competitive if their secondary gels. I do think it's going to be a tougher team to score on. Not one of these guys that thinks they're going to have a top 10 defense, because I'd have to see that to believe it. They weren't that great at stopping the run last year. Great at pass rush. But this defense has a potential. This defense, if everything clicks for them right away, they could be a borderline top 10 defense this year. Sadly, they're not going to score a lot of points. Not a lot of speed on the ground, on the floor with this team. And I like Cam Scatterbo, but, he's going to be used in goal line. Very touchdown-dependent guy. He can catch the ball in the backfield, do some things, but the defensive additions in Jackson Dart are going to be the X factor. I really think they should play Jackson Dart off the rip. I think Jackson Dart brings an element of arm talent and escapability that would really help this team. I think if the division, if a couple of teams in this division don't play well, it is quite possible this team could go 8-9. If Jackson Dart plays and clicks, and this defense clicks, it's possible they could go 8-9 if the Cowboys and the Commander. If the Cowboys are really bad, the Commanders take a step back. You look at the Giants' schedule; they could squeak out some wins here and there, but I think they're more closer to their floor of 5-12. I do think the team's building in the right direction, though. So for whatever that's worth, New York Giants number 27. So New York Jets number 26. This is solely off that I just think they have a little bit better roster. Head coach Aaron Glenn in his rookie year as a head coach. Biggest strength, their secondary. Biggest weakness is their O-line. Best offensive player is Garrett Wilson. Best defensive player is Sauce Gardner. X factors, Justin Fields' state of play. How this team goes is really going to come down to what they get out of Justin Fields, honestly. He still has a lot of the same issues. He's not the greatest at reading defenses and holds onto the ball way too long, takes a lot of bad sacks. If Justin Fields, if they deploy a system where Justin Fields runs a lot more than runs a lot more within the system, I think this team could be sneaky on offense because he's proved he can get in the end zone a few years. Like, one thing you could say is Justin Fields, when he's playing at his best, between running and throwing it combined, he does get in the end zone. I'm just interested to see how Aaron Glenn and this team deploys this offense. They got some good running backs. They got a decent group of wide receivers with Garrett Wilson. I actually think their young rookie tight end's going to be solid. Obviously, this team's not going to be great. Ceiling 7-10, floor 5-12. Number 25, the Carolina Panthers. Second-year coach Dave Canales. The biggest strengths are their skill positions. Now, they just traded Adam Thielen, which kind of hurts them, but I do think they have a lot of good, young, sneaky skill position players. They drafted Tetro and McMillan. They got Jadavian Sanders, who I think is going to have a breakout year at tight end for them. Jalen Coker. They got Chuba Hubbard. They just got a lot of good, young, skilled position players. And I actually think their offensive line is going to be solid this year. Biggest weakness, obviously, is their defense. I think they gave up the most points last year. Or maybe at the 32nd worst defense last year. They added some pieces on that side of the ball. But I really don't think... I really don't think it's going to be enough. They had a Trevon Moehrig who's going to help them a lot on the back end, but, I still think they need a lot of work. They're not great at the linebacker position and on the edge positions. They still have Derek Brown, who's just a beast up the middle, but it's just not going to be enough. Like, I do think this team's actually going to score a lot more points than people think. They're just not going to be able to stop anyone enough for them to capitalize on scoring those points. I think Bryce Young has a great year this year. He was really good for them down the stretch. He led the second half of the season in big-time throws. So I'm excited to see what this team does, and I've always hoped Carolina could get on track. I just love the color scheme and the logo, and I'm always rooting for Bryce Young. I like the underdogs. I just really thought he was going to be really good coming out of college, but as long as he stays healthy, right, he looks like he's going in the right direction. So Carolina Panthers, number 25. Number 24, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Head coach Liam Cohen in his rookie year. Biggest strength is their pass rush, although I feel as though they've spent money and draft capital there at the pass rush, and it's not where it should and needs to be for this team. It's still like a little underwhelming, but it is the strength of their defense. Biggest weakness is obviously their secondary. They were one of the worst pass defending teams last year. It's, their best offensive players, Brian Thomas Jr., obviously had a breakout year last year as a rookie. Best defensive player is Josh Allen, plays along the edge. Underrated player, but still needs to play a little bit better, I feel like, than, what they've paid him. This team really comes down to Trevor Lawrence. It's a make-or-break season for him. He's got to come out and play. I'd like to say to the best of his ability that we know how, but, it's just at times he looks so talented and other times he just looks fucking god-awful. And I don't know if it's scheme, lack of talent. We have a hard time deciphering, or I think most people have a hard time deciphering, especially at the quarterback position. If a quarterback is at a specific position and playing a specific way, everyone has varied opinions onto if it's the actual team that's making the team suffer or the quarterback that's making the team suffer, vice versa. People can't sift through the chaff and see how talented a guy is. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence has all the tools to be a high-level quarterback. The height, the weight, the speed, the ball. He has all the skills throwing the ball, the velocity. He has all the arm talent stuff. He has the mind. He just hasn't been consistent. And I personally think with some of the stuff they've had around him, his skill set says he should be able to uplift an offense to be better than they actually are. This is his last chance to really make it work because I don't know if they're going to take his option on his contract, if they're going to let him go, they're going to draft a quarterback. No, he got signed. I'm pretty sure he got signed. He can't. There's no option. He got signed to a long-term deal. So they're stuck with him, so they got to make it fucking work. But Ceiling for this team is 9-8. I think they could win this division. It's going to be tough. It's going to come down to them and the Texans, obviously, will have down further down the list. But, this could be a sneaky team. They could click with a new head coach and coordinators. They could click and be really good offensively. I could see that happening. But they're going to be in the same position as Carolina's in. They could possibly score a lot of points. You can't play zero defense, but you gotta play. You could play some defense. You could play some defense and win a lot of football games. You can't play none. So the secondary for this team needs to step up. Floor 6-11. Definitely interested to see how Jacksonville does. Jacksonville Jaguars 24. 23, the Miami Dolphins. Head coach Mike McDaniel. He's 28-23 in his tenure in Miami. Biggest strength is speed on both sides of the ball. Biggest weakness is O-line. Best offensive player is Tyreek Hill, obviously. Best defensive player is Minkah Fitzpatrick, who they've just acquired via trade from the Steelers. The X factor really comes down to, obviously, health. I wrote Devin Achane's health, but health in general. If all the offensive pieces on this team are healthy and Tua's healthy, they're going to score a lot of points. But particularly Devin Achane's health, he's so explosive and fast. He could do a lot of different things, but he's a slight guy. He's not that big, and he's just proven so far that he's not really all that durable. And it's what's really stopping this offense from really exploding. Sadly, this is a team that I think has talent on both sides of the ball. If you pull up their depth chart, you look at both sides of the ball. You look at their roster and you're like, apart from the O-line, you're like, man, this team has talent on both sides of the ball. But there's just a level of continuity, not only between like scheme and consistency of players, but the overall, obviously, health of this team has been a huge issue. And I can't see this team really being that good. Ceiling 7-10, maybe 8-9. I also think they could be horrible. Especially if they have health issues again this year. I just don't. I don't think this team sniffs the playoffs. I don't even think this team sniffs the playoffs if they're healthy, to be quite honest with you. I think this is Mike McDaniel's last year as a Miami Dolphin, unless they just really like him and want to give him more of a shot. Even with a winning record, it's just he's not getting it done with this team. They might have to blow this whole entire team up, to be honest with you, if they suck again this year. Sadly, they paid Tua all that money, and Tua's a good player. He's a hit away from being 6 feet under. So Miami, number 23. Number 22, the New England Patriots. Head coach Mike Vrabel. It is his rookie year with the Patriots. However, as a coach, he's 56-58 with the Titans. Biggest strength is going to be their defense. I actually think this defensive unit could possibly be a top 10 defensive unit this year. Biggest weakness is their skill positions, particularly at wide receiver and tight end. They signed Stephon Diggs, who just came off an ACL injury, and he's looking really good at camp, and his skill set translates to still being good at 30, 31 years old. And I do think it's going to boost the offense a little bit, along with, their young running back stud, Travion Henderson. I do think those things will boost the offense, but I still think the offense is, lacking skill to make a serious leap, barring some exponential play out of those aforementioned players. I just don't see the offense being that great. I think it'll be efficient. But I think their strength definitely is going to be, they're going to lean on their defense and smart passing. Best offensive player, Stephon Diggs. Best defensive player, Christian Gonzalez. Basically, this is going to come down to Drake May's development. He graded out really well last year, in a limited offense where they really didn't, lager their attacks. They were kept it all straightforward, a really good run balance scheme. But Drake May's pretty skilled, man. He can get out. He can run the ball a little bit. He's a confident player, strong in the pocket, stays in there and delivers the ball. I think if looking at their schedule, if things break the right way for this team, I think they could go 10-7. I think their floor is 7-10. I think it falls somewhere in the middle. I think they're a team that are way better than people think, but I think they do miss the playoffs. New England 22. Number 21, the Dallas Cowboys. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer in his rookie year. Biggest strength is going to be their aerial attack. It's going to be one of the best in the league. Biggest weaknesses, obviously, is their defense and has been their defense for a while. What's interesting about their defense is it actually grades out solidly to where you would quote unquote need it. And what I need is need is enough with an offense that's typically as good as the Dallas's offense for them to win. And the problem is it's not consistent in the right times. Their defense tends to lapse in big games. Best offensive player, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Best defensive player. I didn't change this. Obviously, everyone knows that Micah Parsons just got traded this week to the Packers. So I don't know who their best defensive player is now. Trevon Diggs. They got Clark back in the trade, defensive tackle. So I mean, maybe Digizua could be their best defensive player. But yeah, Micah Parsons is no longer a Cowboy. He is now a Packer. X factor is obviously health and defense. This team could fall apart pretty quick. All it's going to take is Dak to get injured again, or CeeDee Lamb to get injured, or some of their offensive linemen to get injured, and this team will be, a 7-10, 6-11, 5-12 team. I have their ceiling at 10-7 because if they're really, really good offensively and get enough from their defense, they can win a lot of football games. But ultimately, the Cowboys will either miss the playoffs or if they get in as the wild card, they'll get trashed by somebody. Dallas 21. Do think this team needs a whole entire regime change and makeover. And if this team's going to get rid of Micah Parsons like they did, it starts with the next move being restructured that $60 million contract with Dak. Let's see if they do it. Number 20, the Atlanta Falcons. Head coach Raheem Morris, who went 8-9 last year. Biggest strength is their O-line and skill position players. Their O-line is arguably one of the best O-lines in the league. What's interesting about their O-line is they're really good from the interior out, which is usually not how team, could just be by happenstance. They have some of the best guards in the league. Biggest weakness has always been, for the longest time, is their front seven. They can never figure out their linebacker position. They can never figure out their edge rushers. Their defensive interior guys, they draft every single year for these players. And I like some of the young players they've added this year, but, it remains to be seen what they get out of their front seven. Best offensive player, Bijan Robinson. Best defensive player, Jesse Bates III. The X factor comes down to, what is Michael Penix going to be? Looked good in the few games he played last year. Interested to see if he can step up and handle the moment. Michael Penix was a baller in college. Weird delivery on the throws. Wasn't super consistent in his downfield throws in college, but has all the arm in the world to do so. A very smart player. He's got a little shiftiness, can get out there and run. And I think in this offense, that if he can play well in this offense, like decent, and control this offense and just get the pill around and run a little bit, I think this offense could be one of the best offenses in the league. They got weapons all over the place. They have one of the best offensive lines. I think this is going to be Bijan Robinson, if it shakes out, could be the offensive player of the year this year or the MVP this year. I mean, they typically give it to quarterbacks, but I think he could definitely be the offensive player of the year this year. They're really going to lean heavy on Bijan this year. Ceiling 10 in a weak division, they can definitely go 10-7. Floor 7-10. I just think that this football team is too talented for them to be like atrocious. I think they're going to be fighting for the number one spot in their division with Tampa. Atlanta 20. Number 19, Seattle Seahawks. So I see a lot of people putting the freaking Seahawks in their top 10, which makes no sense to me. I mean, they're going to be decent on defense, but they lost players. They lost their best wide receiver, DK Metcalf. They're picking up Sam Darnold, who, you better cross your fingers with Sam Darnold coming there and being the guy. You got to remember, Sam Darnold threw 30-something touchdowns last year on a team with the best offensive line, arguably, and some of the best skill position players in the league, from running back to tight end to wide receiver. And no one expected that shit. He comes to a team where the offensive line's not as good. Jackson Smith-Njigba's good, but that's all they got. They got Cooper Kupp, who's coming off injuries. Like, it would take all these players to be fully healthy and just like super extraordinary. Kenneth Walker's always friggin' hurt. Whatever. Head coach Mike McDonald, 9-8. Biggest strengths, their front seven. Biggest weaknesses, their O-line. Best defensive players, Leonard Williams and Devon Witherspoon. It really comes down to Sam Darnold. Could they go 10-7? If Sam Darnold can play the way he played last year, yeah, they can go 10-7. But I think they're going to be a middle of the pack team. I think they'll be a 7-8 win team, maybe closer to 6-11. With this team's injury history and the fact that I just really don't trust Sam Darnold coming from where he came from to what he's playing with now. I just don't get it, dude. I love Colin. I'm one of the few people that love Colin Cowherd, but Colin Cowherd's got them like sixth or some shit in his herd hierarchy, and it's like, where do you where do you get what information do you have, or what are you gathering to think that this team is the sixth best team heading into the league? I think there's a little bit of bias there because he's a Seattle guy and his Seahawks are his favorite team. I think he's fucking nuts. Seattle 19. Number 18, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another one where I see teams have them super, super high. I just don't know what you're going to get from Pittsburgh. And they keep finishing middle of the pack. So I have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 18. Head coach Mike Tomlin, 119, 118, and 2. Biggest strength, obviously, is going to be their defense. They're going to have one of the best defenses in the league. Biggest weakness, though, is the cornerback position. They have addressed and picked up new corners in the offseason, but no matter who they have lately at corner, they tend to get torched down the sidelines by teams. They added DK Metcalf, which is a big pickup for them. He's going to be a target machine. Obviously, the best defensive player is TJ Watt. And the X factor is really going to be what are they going to get out of Aaron Rodgers? Like, can he stay healthy? If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I mean, he's still got the arm talent and the skills and the IQ to, help a football team. I think at the top end, if this team shakes out really well, they'll have a top 10 defense. And I think if they can get their run game going with their new young running back, Caleb Johnson, they got some good running backs there. They're going to have a good committee. They got Jaylen Warren, and they have Kenneth Gainwell signed with them, who for some reason, every team he's ever played on, you just see that dude getting touches. Kenneth Gainwell will fuck your fantasy over. Like, you'll like. I remember when I had who the hell did I have? I had Jalen Hurts one year in fantasy, and I was like banking on him to get all these rushing touchdowns. And in the red zone, they're handing the ball off to Kenneth Gainwell in the red zone. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Kenneth Gainwell will come in and steal snaps from your best player. It's odd, but they're gonna run the ball a shit ton. They have a solid offensive line, and they're gonna throw the fuck out of the ball to DK Metcalf. So for all you fantasy guys out there. But I think this team's going to be like a tough out, solid, middle of the pack team. I mean, could Aaron Rodgers have a big year and they go, 10-7, 11-6? Sure, but I think they're going to miss out barely at the end of the year on the playoffs. It'll be a tough out, but I'm just not buying the Steelers hype. I've seen people have them in their top 10 too, and I just think that's crazy. So Steelers 18. This one's surprising to a lot of people. The Chicago Bears actually think that this division might be the best division in football this year. Head coach Ben Johnson in his rookie year. Biggest strength is going to be this year their defense. Biggest weakness is the O-line. Although the O-line for this team is a little bit better than people think, but it's definitely the weakest area of their team. Best offensive players, DJ Moore. Best defensive players, Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat. The X factor comes down to Caleb Williams, who did not have a bad year last year, contrary to popular belief. Threw 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's got escapability, mobility, always keeping his eyes down the field. He's actually, people can say what they want about Caleb Williams, but he's actually a really good player, instinctual player. I just think in times he can get in his own fucking head and be like a little bit of a basket case in there. He doesn't show it. If you're not really paying attention to it, you don't really see it, but he definitely gets in his own head. And I think it's good he's got Ben Johnson, who's been being a fucking hard ass, because sometimes that's what these like players that act divish need, is someone to get in their fucking ass. I actually think the Bears could be pretty good this year. They're ceiling 10-7. Their floor 7-10. I think this team's going to be a tough out. I think Caleb Williams is going to have a better sophomore year than most quarterbacks do. I think he's going to improve. I actually think this team is going to be pretty sneaky. Chicago at 17. Got all the firepower to do it, too. Number 16, the Houston Texans. So this is a team that, like, I've been unsure about where I want to put this team. DeMeco Ryans, 20-14. Biggest strength is their defense. Biggest weakness is their O-line. Obviously, they got rid of their left tackle and traded him to the Commanders. Larry Tunsil. And that was like their last really good offensive lineman that they traded away. So I'm worried about this offensive line, especially in a team that's going to be a lot more pass intensive this year. Best offensive players are Nico Collins and CJ Stroud. Best defensive players, Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson Jr. Basically, this team's going to come down to like how well the all line can protect and keep CJ Stroud upright. I do think this team, if the wide receivers stay healthy, they're going to score points this year. I do like the running back room if Joe Mixon's healthy, but he's already supposed to be knackered up with injuries. This team, I really do think, should be the favorite to win the division. 10-7 should be their ceiling, and their floor should be 7-10. But I really think this division's just so awful this year. It's always awful. But I could see this team having a losing record this year in making the playoffs because they're sadly just the best division. I worry about this team offensively. If this offensive line is as horrible as I think it might be, CJ Stroud's going to struggle. The only thing that bodes well for them is this could be possibly the number one defense this year. This defense is stacked all over the place. They played well last year. Front seven's gnarly, has speed. The back end with Lassiter and Derek Stingley Jr. This defense is going to be flying all over the place. D'Amico Ryans, former linebacker, just knows how to coach these defensive teams up. They're just going to be flying to the ball. They're going to be making plays. Luckily for them in a division like this, I still think that having an elite defense will be enough for them to win this division. So Houston's 16, but I really think Houston can be anywhere from 16 all over the board downward. I just think that they could be awful just as much as every other team could be awful, depending on their health. So number 15, the Arizona Cardinals. Head coach Sean Gannon, 12-22. Biggest strength, skill position players. Biggest weakness is their O-line, which they have, addressed to a degree. Trey McBride is their best player, along with Kyler Murray. I don't know why I put quarterback twice. Best defensive player, Budda Baker. X Factor is going to be just like, the Houston Texans is really what they get out of the offensive line. I think this could possibly be Sean Gannon's last year if this team isn't as good or better as it was last year. I think this could possibly be Sean Gannon's last year. And I also think that depending on how much time is left on Kyler Murray's contract, I wonder if this could be soon end of Kyler Murray's campaign with Arizona, because they've alluded to possibly dealing Kyler Murray before. And you just wonder to yourself, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good young stud, wide receiver. You have one of the best young tight ends in the league. You got some good young O-line pieces that have yet to come to fruition. You're starting to build a really good, solid defense. I love their latest draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. Will Johnson Jr. at quarter. I think he's going to step in and play that outside man position for them very well. I think he's an underrated player. But for the Cardinals, you got to ask yourself, I'm building this cohesion and this really good young roster up. The question you got to ask yourself is Kyler Murray at 28 years old now, the future at quarterback of this team. They have a decision to make. Depending on how the season goes, they have a decision to make on who their head coach is and if Kyler Murray's the future. You could possibly trade Kyler Murray to one of the bad teams for some decent draft capital if you don't think so. And there's good quarterbacks coming out next year. But I do think Arizona is going to be solid on defense, and I do think they're going to score points between Kyler Murray's underrated arm, escapability. The offense is going to be versatile, and I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. for a second. I hope all my buddies who love college football, too, I love all of you, but I hope y'all fucking watch this shit. Because so many of my buddies watch college football, and they all fucking live in this fantasy land where they act like as if just because a dude plays bad or good in college football means he's automatically just going to... Same with the pundits. I'm sick of everyone saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. had a fucking shit year, a down year, and he didn't live up to expectations. How many dudes come in the league and fucking go for 1,500 and fucking 10 plus as a rookie? The dude had 900 yards and got in the end zone a decent clip. I think he got in the end zone 5 or 6 times. What do you want? What do you want out of a rookie? That's better than most rookie years. That's better than a lot of the rookies last year that got drafted. That's better than most of them. Like, what other rookie wide receivers had better campaigns than Marvin Harrison Jr. last year? One? Sorry, I can't think of the top of my head. Brian Thomas Jr.? Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a lot better than he was last year, this year. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a plus 1,000 guy. This offense likes to run a lot of RPO stuff, balance stuff, so like the touchdowns are going to be spread all over the place. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a really good player. And, you know, so you got to ask yourself, is Kyler Murray the guy for this team? Sorry to go on that little rant, but I'm just... Without looking at Marvin Harrison Jr.'s stats, you know, I just, you know, people talk like Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't fucking do shit on this team last year. He's pretty good. All you dudes that love college football so much and glamour, you guys hype up and like de-escalate all these players and stuff, and like your takes on them are just so fucking awful because you love college football. It really, I think the love for college football at times and how spectacular some players are or aren't at the college stage really affects people's projections of how players are going to be in the NFL and how good players are in the NFL. Y'all don't analyze players. You like and love players. So, ran over. Arizona, ceiling 10-7, floor 8-9. Going to be an exciting team. San Francisco 49ers. So I see the 49ers get put all over the place. I see people having the San Francisco 49ers in the fucking 20s. I've seen them go as high as 10 in some people's rankings. I have him here at 14. Kyle Shanahan, one of the best coaches in the league. 78-66 record. Biggest strength, coaching schemes and skill players. Biggest weakness is their interior offensive defensive line, which at times you can work around, but has really been an issue for them recently. Best offensive players, Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, obviously. Best defensive players, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Just by looking at their top tier players, like, you just can't go wrong. They're really good at positions that matter. The X factor is really going to come down. Can Brock Purdy keep up the level of play that he's been playing? Like, people forget last year, they had a lot of injuries, and Brock Purdy was still one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And so that's another thing, is when is the Brock Purdy hate going to stop? He's not, I wouldn't say Brock Purdy's like elite tier, but Brock Purdy is a damn good quarterback in the NFL. Highly intelligent, makes quick decisions with the football, gets it out fast, super accurate. And the thing that is understated about Brock Purdy's game is he can get out and wiggle a little bit, man. From an efficiency standpoint, he's one of the better rushing quarterbacks in the league. You know, I wish he would use it a little bit more. This team has the easiest schedule in the NFL, and that's one of the reasons why I have them at 14. And I think that if Brock Purdy plays the way he played last year, with a lot of these young players stepping up that show promise, plus if all the main core players stay healthy, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle, this team is still going to be good defensively, and they're still going to score a lot of points. This team, I think, could win their division too. Ceiling 10, 7, maybe 11 wins, because the schedule is not. The schedule is just easy. If they all get injured, they could be bad, obviously, but I just don't see. I see this team bouncing back in a huge way. San Francisco 14. Number 13, the Minnesota Vikings. So this is a team similar to the Texans, where I'm putting them here based off how good I think the team is on paper, and it's kind of like a projection, but this team could finish all over the fucking place. Head coach Kevin McConnell, great coach, 34-17. Biggest strength, skill position players. Biggest weakness, and I wouldn't say it's a weakness yet, we just don't know what we're going to get from J.J. McCarthy. Justin Jefferson's their best player, wide receiver. Obviously, best defensive players, Byron Murphy and Ivan Pace Jr. How this team goes is really going to come back, and again, is going to come down to J.J. McCarthy again, like I was saying earlier about Marvin Harrison Jr. Everyone has their opinions on how good a player is going to be in the league, right? Rarely do I ever get super definitively staunch and just make up my mind on a player before they get to the league. Which, again, J.J. McCarthy gets a lot of fucking hate And I love these guys. I love college football that are like, oh, McCarthy. McCarthy wasn't asked to do anything, and he wasn't asked to do anything over in Michigan with the Wolverines. He just had to manage the game, and it's like, okay, he still had a lot of big time throws in college, and when they asked him to step up and he had to make plays, he was Johnny on the spot all the time. The dude's athletic, can run. He's highly intelligent, makes good decisions with the football, and he's accurate with the football. Just because someone isn't asked to do something doesn't mean that you can't see that someone has skills beyond what he's asked to do. And that's the problem, is like a lot of these people just actually can't analyze an individual football player. They're always taking outside information that doesn't always matter. Oh, always thinking about what team they were on, what they were asked to do. And it's like, no, just take a second, stop, and watch the dude make throws. Watch the guy run. Watch the guy command an offense. I'm not saying J.J. McCarthy is going to be a good player. But when I watch J.J. McCarthy play, whether it was in college or in practice, I watch him play and I'm like, oh man, that's a fundamentally sound quarterback right there. That's a guy you could do some shit with. Like, he's accurate, can run a system, is a leader, charismatic, he's athletic. Like, just because a guy was asked to play in a certain system doesn't mean that he's just beholden to fail because he's not playing under fucking center, or if he's only taking snaps and shotgun. He's in a position right now where he has an opportunity to do something really special with a team that's really good on both sides of the ball here. This team could possibly win their division or finish last in their division, depending on how they are, depending on how J.J. McCarthy is. I do lean more towards J.J. McCarthy being good enough to make shit happen with this football team. He's got one of the best offensive lines. Some would say the best offensive line. And he has one of the best skill position groups in a defense that's going to give him the ball back. They're going to be able to play a lot of different styles of offense. Keep away, control the clock. They're going to be able to take shots downfield. They're going to be able to attack the middle of the field. Zone running underneath stuff. They have a lot of good complementary players. And a really good head coach with a really good scheme. I actually think this team's going to be a really good team this year. So I'm rooting for J.J. McCarthy. A lot of Cheeto finger dudes out here just act like just because a guy played in a certain system that he's going to be garbage in the NFL. I mean, he could be, but it's not because all these college football dudes are making fucking articulate projections, or because they got some sort of fucking intellectual capacity. They're just talking shit because they like and dislike players. Number 12, the Cincinnati Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, who has a 54-1 record. Biggest strength, quarterback and skill positions. Biggest weakness is obviously their defense. Best offensive players are Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Best offensive players, Trey Hendrickson on the edge. Their X factors really going to be a lot of, schematic stuff. Do they start fast out the gate? They got an opportunity right off the rip to possibly go 3-0. And can the defense creep back to average is what they really need. This team's going to be better this year on offense than they were last year, if you can believe that. And can this defense just do enough to give this team maybe one or two more possessions a game? You don't need to be elite. Can you creep back towards average? I do love all the young players that we have on defense. It's really going to come down to, can they gel and can Al Golden scheme them together? Obviously, as everyone knows, that follows my content knows me, this is my favorite team. I love this group of players from a personality standpoint. I don't think I've ever loved a group of players more. I have favorite Bengals from different periods of time, but I don't think I've ever loved and believed in more a group of players these last handful of years than these guys. And obviously the defense has held us back. We went 9-8 back-to-back years and narrowly missed both playoff years back-to-back. And it's mostly just because of this defense. Joe Burrow's the fucking man. Arguably the best quarterback in the league. He never has an offensive line that's outside of the above 25 ranked, and he still just friggin' destroys everybody. I do think he needs to step up and play a little bit better in big games and in the postseason. He tends to get like a little squirrely and get a little too aggressive and try to force balls here and there and stuff. But I actually think this is going to be the best offensive line we've had in a while. We have a plug and play left guard, Dylan Fairchild, who looks great. We just picked up more depth with Dalton Risner at right guard. The offense, at least my worries, is this defense. Let's see what Al Golden can do. Defense hasn't looked super great in the preseason, but as everyone knows, defense takes time to gel. This schedule this year, I think we could win a lot of football games if the defense creeps back towards average. Really think we could win 11, 12 games. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. Probably we'll go 10-7. I do think we have a bounce back year. The floor will be 9-8 again and missing the playoffs. So, number 12, Cincinnati Bengals. Who dey? Number 11, the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay, 88-57, one of the best coaches in the league, biggest strengths, quarterback, skill position players, and obviously scheming. This team's one of the best teams at scheming and tailoring their offenses and defenses, the game plans towards the teams that they're going to play. These schemes are always... The strong suit of this coaching staff and this Rams team is they can always implement game plans that take other teams out of their element or play in a way they amalgamate themselves to what the other teams give them. Always good at making adjustments. Their biggest weakness is their secondary. Best offensive players are Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua. Best defensive players are Jared Verse and Cameron Kitchens. I don't know why there's a C. For the C factor is health and defensive potential. So this team has the capacity to win their division, and I think that this team's going to be good no matter what. I think they're going to be they're an underrated defensive unit this year, and I think they're actually going to show that and be a good defensive unit this year. A lot of really good young defenders. This is really going to come down to the health of Matt Stafford. So this is just a projection. If Matt Stafford is healthy, this is going to be one of the better teams in football. They keep talking about he has a bad back and he's getting treatment all the time, and we haven't even really seen him much at training camp and all this stuff. So if Matt Stafford's not there, this team's going to be a sub 500 team. If Matt Stafford's there and he's fully healthy, this team's going to win football games. And if you look at their schedule, they could probably go 12-5 if everything clicks for this team. Puka Nacua is a stud. They're deep at the skill position players. Kyron Williams is going to get a huge target share this year if he stays healthy. And I actually think this defense is going to take the ball away and give Matt Stafford these guys a lot of good opportunities. So Los Angeles Rams, if they're healthy, 11. Number 10, the Washington Commanders. So originally I had the Commanders number 8, but after thinking about it the past couple days, I did some more moving around. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a sophomore slump by any means from Jaden Daniels, but I do think this defense is they're just getting old. This is old, slow defense, and I don't know if they can replicate some of the games that they played last year. Those jerseys right there, I hate yellow, but those jerseys are fucking clean right there. Those jerseys are fire. Dan Quinn was great last year with this team. He had throughout the duration of the season, including the playoffs, he went 12-5. Biggest strengths, obviously the quarterback position. Jaden Daniels is just a force multiplier between his accuracy, his intellect, his instincts. His timing and instincts, knowing when the pocket's going to get out, and it's going to collapse, and he needs to get out and get on the move. And the one underrated thing about Jaden Daniels, if you really watch him, is not only is he a fantastic runner, he might be the safest runner in the league. He knows how to go limp, get down, get out of bounds, make sneaky little moves to ensure that he doesn't get himself hurt. And that's freaking huge because, not for nothing, he's very slightly built. You always worry about guys built like him with their durability, but he really prioritizes, no matter what he's doing, protecting himself. And it's such an underrated trait for quarterback to have. The Commanders have an opportunity here going forward to build a really, really, really good team for the next handful of years, especially with him being on his rookie contract. Biggest weaknesses, obviously, the leaky defense. At times, they played good defense last year, good enough to get them into games, but keep them in games and win games. But they also had a lot of games where they score just enough to win these like shootout football games. Their defense only at a handful of points ever did enough to stop anyone. Always in like shootout, like high scoring, close games. And I really do think it's going to be a lot of the same this year. They also got Terry McLaurin, who hasn't been there throughout the duration of camp, but they just got his 3-year contract extension done. Bobby Wagner, they get their second year of Marshawn Lattimore, which will help them a lot. The X factor is really going to be what form is this defense is in. They got, like I said, they got a lot of old pieces. They got some new pieces. And if this defense can be average, it's really going to help this team. And I think they're going to be right back in the mix where they are. But I actually could see this team, because of the defense, when your defense is not up to par, there's a lot of variance in football games. The odds of your defense being good at the right times again and making stops at the right times when they're just not consistent a second year, it's just not something you want to really hang your hat on. The variance is just too wide. They had a Deebo Samuel, and I think that this team, if they're all healthy and if Deebo loses like 20 pounds, will be super fucking good. They got the rookie standout Ja'Cory Krosky of the Merit, who I knew D's would take in the fucking draft. I was waiting for it, D's. I think this team's going to be explosive offensively. They've bolstered their offensive line with Laramie Tunzel. And this team's going to probably be a playoff team. I wouldn't be shocked if they went like 9-8 because of the defense and crashed out, maybe. I lean to them being back. I lean them being second place in the division. I lean more towards them going back to the playoffs. So Washington Commanders got something cooking here, number 10. Number 9, the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's overall record as a coach is 81-55. This is his second year with the Chargers. Biggest strength, I put defense in capital letters because it was the number 1 defense last year. Biggest weakness is their offensive line. And I say that because I don't really think their interior offensive line is the best. It's improved. But they also lost Rashawn Slater. And so now they're going to be kicking Joe Alt to left tackle. But they got some good backup swing tackle pieces, and I do think they're still going to be able to run the football. Best offensive player is Justin Herbert. Best offensive player, other best offensive players are Sean Slater, who's now out for the season, sadly. Best defensive player, Derwin James. We used to call him just number 23 or number 3 because you were always like the candy man. You're scared to say his name, and he'll fucking appear, disappear, whatever. Like, you're just worried he's going to get hurt. The PFF guys. You should just call him by his number. One of the best players in the league. I think sometimes a forgotten top-tier defensive player in the league. The X factor is really going to be how does this O-line play? Obviously, they've been knackered with injuries already. I do think Joe Alt is one of the best young tackles in the league, and I think that they'll be able to easily kick him to the left side of the line. Excuse me. And I still think that this offensive line is going to be able to do enough to protect the quarterback and move the ball. Omarion Hampton could possibly have a breakout here at running back, and I do love the balance in how this team's built offensive and defensively. Listen, John Harbaugh, like Pete Carroll, is one of those coaches where he has good concepts of how to attack teams with their style of football, and if they get the right players, they're very effective. This team's going to be one of the more balanced teams in the league this year, and they're going to have a top 5 defensive unit again with young players who are going to improve, who were good last year. This team's going to be in a tough division. I do think they finished 3rd. Ceiling, they could finish 2nd, depending on, battling it out with the Broncos. They're going to be fighting for that 2nd slot, but Chiefs too. Who knows how good the Chiefs are going to be with their suspensions and things of that nature. This is going to be one of the funnest divisions to watch. There's going to be 3 really good football teams this year in this division. Floor 8 and 9. I lean more towards the ceiling. I think this is going to be a really good football team, and I think Justin Herbert. People hate on Justin Herbert, but he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and I think this year, this offense and him and I do think he's going to take a jump this year with this team. Missing Rashawn Slater is going to hurt them, but luckily for them, they got Joe Alt, who could play both sides of the line. This is going to be a fun team to watch. Los Angeles Chargers, number 9. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I actually had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a lot lower than this, but I just love some of the pickups they made this offseason. I love a lot of the young defensive players like Zion McCollum. I think is going to have a big year this year. among other players. Obviously, they picked up Emeka Egbuka. Brian Bowles, 27 and 24, biggest strength offense. They put up a lot of points last year, boys and girls. Baker Mayfield, one of 13 players in the history of football to ever throw for over 40 touchdowns. Biggest weakness, the aging defense is a concern for me. A lot of their defenders are getting older. Best offensive players, obviously, Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irving, who's one of the best young running backs in the league. Best defensive player, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr. The X factor is really going to come down to, can Baker Mayfield, have back-to-back good years of play? I don't think he needs to throw 40-something touchdowns. And in fact, I think this offense is going to be a lot more balanced this year. And I don't think he throws 40 touchdowns again. But I do think he's going to throw 30-plus touchdowns, and he's going to not turn the ball over that much. And they're going to be a lot more balanced with Bucky Irving there. They just got so many weapons. K. Otton's an underrated tight end. And this offensive line stays healthy. This team, in my opinion, should run away with a weak division this year. Ceiling 10-7. They tend to upset a lot of really good teams too. I could see this team maybe winning 1-2 more games. It's possible. They're a team that's so explosive and diverse on offense that sometimes they could come in with the right game plan, and they're just a bad matchup against some defenses. So I definitely have them running away with this division. The fucking man, the myth, the legend, Baker Mayfield out here doing Baker Mayfield shit. It's funny. I was watching. How does anyone not love Baker Mayfield? I was watching tape on Bucky Irving a couple weeks ago. And literally I'm 5 minutes into the tape and I see 2 or 3 plays where Baker throws a pass to Bucky Irving or somebody, and then Baker's running down the field blocking dudes. And regardless of if he blocks a guy or if they knock him down, he gets up, he just starts talking shit to dudes, like throwing darts, running down the field, blocking dudes, talking shit. I would be losing my mind if I was a player and Baker Mayfield was my captain, my quarterback. He'd have me so fucking fired up. Like, he's just, look at him. He's just a fucking psychopath. Tampa Bay, number 8. Number 7. So a lot of people think that this might be my hottest take of the year. A lot of people think that I'm crazy for rating the Denver Broncos so high. Sean Payton, 170, 105 in his career. Biggest strength is going to be their defense and coaching. Sean Payton is one of the most revolutionary coaches in the history of the NFL. His scheming, his understanding of how to physically place players and attack and exploit cracks in defenses. Quick time passing, balanced. He could do everything, whether you line it up in shotgun, pick teams apart, or you play like a balanced power run game. He has such a deep tool bag. Biggest weakness is the skill player depth. I think outside of a few players, this team's going to be very centric around Courtland Sutton, Evan Ingram in the backs. My biggest worry about this offense is if a team takes Courtland Sutton away or Evan Ingram away, who's going to be the guy that consistently steps up in the wide receiver tree? They got a lot of good young wide receivers that show promise, but this offense could be held back if no one steps up and plays a bigger role within it. Best offensive players are Courtland Sutton and guard Quinn Manners. Best defensive player, obviously one of the best defensive players in the league, Patrick Surtain II. Basically, this team is really just going to come down to the health of the team. They've stacked up and loaded up, getting Greenlaw and Hufanga from the 49ers, added a lot of different depth all over this defense. This defense could potentially be the number 1 defense next year. It'll definitely be a top 5 defense next year. They can line up in so many different formations and throw so many different styles of blitzes and coverages at you. This team's going to be a tough team to beat, along with the fact that Bo Nix fits Sean Payton's scheme. High accuracy, dink and dunk style, attacking the middle of the field, layering the runs and then taking your shots downfield to Courtland Sutton here and there. I think that the floor of this offense is really, really high. It's really going to come down to health. And can Bo Nix just be as consistent as he was last year? If he does that along with the defense, this team's going to be really, really damn good. And if Bo Nix takes another step, this team could be This team might be like a P. I think that if Bo Nix ends up being who we think he could be, this team is like a piece or two away from being possibly a Super Bowl team. That's my opinion. I also think this team could possibly win the division this year, depending on how Kansas City plays. Ceiling 12-5, floor 10-7. Another thing about Bo Nix is his escapability. He was killing teams last year, similar to I was talking about how Patrick Mahomes kills teams, extends the play, looks, pumps, nothing's around, pump again, scamper, pick up the first down. Bo Nix can do that and a little bit more, and I just think that if they play like concise and disciplined football on both sides of the ball, this is going to be a tough team to beat. Denver Broncos, number 7. So number 6, Detroit. There's a lot of talk about Detroit losing players and offensive coordinators, but this team's still going to be super talented this year. Dan Campbell, 44-35-1 is their head coach. The biggest strength, skill position players. Biggest weakness is not actually their defensive personnel. It's just their consistency. They're not totally consistent when they need to be. They go from looking like and actually being statistically one of the best defenses in the league to just not showing up at times. Best offensive players, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. Best defensive players, Aiden Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph. Kirby Joseph's such an underrated player, man. So instinctual. Love Kirby Joseph. X factor is their offensive and defensive coordinator. So they lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators that had coaching jobs. We've seen in the past teams not play as well. We had a little blip there where the Eagles didn't play as well a few years ago because they lost defensive and offensive coordinators. They've also lost a few offensive linemen, exclusively Frank Ragnow, their center. But I still think that this team is so talented on both sides of the ball. They're still going to have one of the better offensive lines in the league. They're going to have the best running back, one of the best running back duos in the league. They have one of the best wide receiver cores in the league. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They have one of the best defenses in the league. And they got studs all over that defense. Aiden Hutchinson. They got good young linebackers in Campbell. They got fucking one of the best safety teams in the league in Branch and Kirby Joseph. They've drafted good young players. Isaac Tesla showed that he could come in and be an explosive playmaker down the field as their third or fourth wide receiver option. You know, got Sam Laporta still, who quietly goes under the radar because he just hasn't been as good as his first year, but he's still a really good tight end. So I think that even missing these offensive and defensive coordinators, whoever's next, if you can't step in with this cast of characters, these skill players, and this overall depth of talent, you can't win football games, then you should go fall down somewhere. Detroit, number 6. Another one that's surprising to a lot of people, this for me is the one team that's going to be a little more off projection than all the others. Matt LaFleur, head coach of the Green Bay Packers, 70-38 so far. Biggest strength is going to be their defense. They added Micah Parsons, which obviously I didn't edit. They added Micah Parsons, who fits into a defense, this scheme, perfectly. You're going to be able to line him up all over the place in their hybrid 3-4 defense. Biggest weakness is their wide receiver core, in my opinion. And that's purely because no one's stepped up over the past handful of years and been a truly dominant number 1 wide receiver. You know, they drafted a young wide receiver with their number 1 pick. His name is escaping me. Why is his name escaping me? Matthew Golden, I think. So Matthew Golden, player out of Texas, really solid player in college. Take the top off the defense. Pretty good route runner. I worry about his size. Like, you know, we see a lot of players that are undersized get out, pace and space and get out and make things happen, and the stats look good. But what you're looking for in a number 1 receiver, something that I talk about a lot, is your wide receiver not only has to be good, you know, at all phases of the game, whether it's, you know, down and distance, certain matchups, down the field, being able to run after the catch, but there are times where, you know, you're in the red zone and it's one-on-one and you have to have a guy go out there and make a play on the corner, on the safety. And that requires a level of physical aptitude. Sometimes you just got to toss it up to Quiche. And guys like Matt Golden, I think it's the difference between why the Ravens haven't won a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson yet or gotten to a Super Bowl is because they don't have that true number one guy that can go out and truly physically win matchups against guys. And I still think that's going to be, to a degree, an issue with this Packers team. Is I don't think Golden is that guy that can go out and physically dominate another person at the point of attack when it comes to going after and getting the football. I do think that Jordan Love is quite possibly the most underrated quarterback in the whole entire league, especially out of the good quarterbacks. And his only issue is his health. If he's upright and he's healthy and he's efficient, they're going to spread the ball all over the place regardless of who's out there. Along with Josh Jacobs running the ball on the ground, solid offensive line. This team is another team that could be in the candidacy for the top defensive unit. They're already so good on defense last year. Love Edrin Cooper, their young middle linebacker, who was one of the best middle linebackers in the league last year as a rookie. I really think this team could really, really be special this year if the health isn't a factor and, they could click offensively through the air. I just love everything about this football team. I think there's not a place that they are bad at. Their wide receiver core is not where I want it to be, but I don't think they are bad there. It's their biggest weakness because I think it's their only thing that is somewhat a weakness. But there's way worse wide receivers in the wide receiver cores in the league. Someone needs to step up there. Could it be Matthew Golden? We'll see. I think their ceiling's 13-4. And I think their floor is 10-7. I think no matter what, this team's going to be a really good football team. Sorry on the brain fart on Matt Golden. I've been hit in the head too many times. Green Bay, number 5. Number 4, love this photo. The Buffalo Bills. Head coach Sean McDermott, 86-45. Biggest strength, quarterback, playmaker. Biggest weakness, wide receiver upside. Similar to the Green Bay Packers. Like, who's going to be the number one guy at wide receiver? Someone needs to step up. Best offensive player, obviously Josh Allen. Best defensive players are Matt Milano and Gregory Rousseau. The F factor, not the X factor. This is the second time I've done that. Health and wide receiver number 1. Ceiling 14-3 based off their schedule. And then floor is 11-6. Look, this team's going to be super fucking good again this year. Another thing that we always get embroiled and caught up in, and I think we forget a lot of times, only one team can win the Super Bowl. And I think we do this thing where we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We act like every other team, all the other teams that end up not, only one team wins it. We act like all the other top tier teams are awful and fucking garbage because they're not the ones that won it. Well, if you really paid attention in the last handful of years, the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, they've all been beating each other when they all make it into the playoffs against each other by Jake, Chad, Brett, I love you guys. I mean, the Bengals are the Bills' daddy. But outside of that, even the Bills, the Ravens, the Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Chiefs, they all come down to, these last-second plays or someone making a fucking mistake. Like, all these teams in the top tier are all so good. For the Bills, it's going to come down to health, and I really believe that if a wide receiver can take a step and be a go-to guy for Josh Allen, I know the offense is designed to layer in quarterback runs and get the ball in Cook's hands. But I also think they do a lot of that because they don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. Dalton Kincaid's not panning out to be the slot, number 1 catch man at tight end for them. And honestly, until I see him step up and be that guy, I don't see it. I don't see it right now. He's not what a lot of people thought he was going to be. Could Keon Coleman step up? Could Khalil Shakir step up? I really thought Khalil Shakir was going to win me my fantasy league the other year, and he got 600 yards less than I thought he was going to get. Still a really good player, but these guys got to be healthy and step up. Coleman's an interesting player. Coleman has the physical tools to dominate people at the point of attack, get down the field, run after the catch. I think if they scheme Coleman up right so that they could just get the ball in his hands a lot in the right matchups, I think he could do some damage, but it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, this team's really going to go. There's Josh Allen's going to go. You can make the argument he could be possibly pound for pound the best football player in the league. He's a one-man wrecking crew. I'd like to see them, scheme a little bit better when they get in these close games instead of just running him into a pile when they need a first down all the time. It's always a more likely chance he picks the down up, but If they would have done some bootleg stuff or drawed some play action stuff up or some sneaky shit up, they might have gotten past the Chiefs in the fucking playoffs instead of just running Josh Allen into a pile all the time, as good as he is. It'll be interesting to see. Just the play calling down the stretch for them, I thought, was odd last year. They could have easily been in the Super Bowl, I think. A lot of people picking them to win the Super Bowl this year. I just don't know. All these teams here in the top 5 or 6 are just so good. Buffalo Bills, love them to death. They're my second favorite team. Number 4. Number 3, the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of people have Baltimore first and second, but I have Baltimore third for the sole fact that they just never win the big game. And, Lamar Jackson, who I've always defended his whole entire career, I love Lamar Jackson to death. And I can't stand the Ravens, obviously. But that doesn't mean I can't be honest about how good a player is and have admiration and respect for a player. I love and respect Lamar Jackson. The problem with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens is the pundits and a lot of people try to act like this team is this world beater, fucking killers, and we like to hold all these players to standards when they fall short. But this team right now is arguably the best team that falls short all the time. And we like to kill all these other players for falling short, but then we always make excuses for some reason for the Ravens and Lamar when they fall short. Now, it wasn't Lamar's fault last year, in my opinion, why they fell short, but at the end of the day, if everyone wants to hold people to that standard, I think we got to start holding the Ravens to that standard. John Harbaugh's their head coach, obviously one of the best of all time, 172 and 104, biggest strength, quarterback, playmaker, and their defense. Their defense is going to be one of the best in the league this year. Biggest weakness, again, like I said, wide receiver number 1. I don't think they have a true wide receiver number 1 yet, a guy that could really be a force multiplier down the field and, go up and fucking snatch that ball away from people. This is another team where I'm a true believer that the Bills and the Ravens are a wide receiver number 1 away from winning a Super Bowl. That's how I feel. Not saying that they can't win a Super Bowl the way they are now, but I really do think that it's what holds them back. It's not having to do that's dominant to give the ball to through the air. Best offensive players, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Best defensive players, Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton. The X Factor is really, it's just for this team, there's no real X Factor players or nothing. It's about just finishing playoff games, finishing big games. Someone fumbles or someone makes a terrible play on defense and gives up a big pass play. Again, this team's elite tier. Any one of these top handful of teams can beat each other on any given day, but you got to consistently show us that you can get to the big game, and the Ravens haven't been able to do that yet. Some people think this is the year for them. Ceiling 13-4, floor 11-6. There's no way this team isn't a playoff team, and this team is probably one of the only teams that's most likely a lock to win their division. They're going to be so good through the air. They're going to be so good on the ground. They're going to be really good defensively. They're going to be able to beat you in a lot of different ways. But let's just see if they're consistent down the stretch here. See if they can get to a Super Bowl. I think they could. Baltimore Ravens, number 3. Number 2. So a lot of people have Kansas City lower, but I'm not sipping that Kool-Aid. I think Kansas City is going to be strong again this year. Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid. Look at that record on Andy Reid. 273 wins, 146 losses, and 1 draw. Biggest strength, quarterback and coaching. Biggest weakness, O-line. Best offensive player, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, best defensive players are Chris Jones and Trent McDuffie. The X factor is going to be the O-line health. So I was worried at first, and I did have Kansas City lower, and the only reason why they freaking got ran over in the playoffs against the Eagles is because I still think the Eagles would have won, but the game wasn't even close because their O-line was so destroyed and so beat up. They're like playing interior offensive lineman at tackle. Hard to win games against a team that good when your freaking guards are playing tackle. However, they picked up Josh Simmons in the draft, who by all accounts is looking like an absolute stud and monster. Like, they're just in awe of how good he is already. Plug and play left tackle. They went out and got who do they get? Juwan Howard, right tackle, who's a solid right tackle, and they've bolstered their interior line, and it really comes down to health. So they're still going to have one of the arguably the best center in the league. They're going to have a stud left tackle. They're bringing in a guy who has experience and has played pretty well in the league at right tackle. So this offensive line, it's not going to be where you would want it ideally, but it's not going to be a bad offensive line. They got, of course, Kansas City's just always got dudes that can't stay out of trouble, so they got guys on suspension. They brought Pacheco's going to be back, and he's looking like he's running strong, looking like he's going to be healthy. This team's going to beat teams because of fundamentally sound coaching and having arguably the best quarterback in the league and one of the best defenses in the league. This team is still stacked on both sides of the ball, and they're going to be able to score. Patrick Mahomes is just so good of a playmaker, so intelligent, and I really think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to play really well this year. Now, I do think with the suspensions, and Travis Kelce getting a little bit older, I do think this offense can't reach the peak of some of these other offenses. But with the defense and the coaching, and as good as I think Mahomes is going to play this year, this team is still going to be one of the best football teams in the league. They're going to be super efficient on offense. They're going to be fucking balanced. Mahomes is going to make plays. They're going to be good on special teams, and they're going to be really good on defense. Don't sleep on this team. This easily, I don't think this team's going to win 15 games like they did last year. But this team, I still think this team can win their division. It's going to be a battle between them and the Broncos. But if people really think that the Chiefs are going to come out and just be some pancake team, some fucking cupcake team this year, you say that until they come and smack you in the fucking mouth. I know dudes that, I know buddies that are like, oh, we play Kansas City, we're going to take them out this year. And it's like their team's like a bottom of the pack team. It's like, give me a fucking break. Kansas City, number 2. And number 1, for practical reasons and by default because it's the first projection of the year for my power rankings. Number 1, your defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Head coach Nick Sirianni, 48-20 is their head coach. Biggest strength, the trenches, both sides of the ball. This team dominates on both sides of the ball, typically offensive and defensive line. Biggest weakness is depth on defense. They've lost some players. They've lost some players on both sides of the ball, and defensively they're going to be starting 6 new guys, so I'm interested to see how that goes. Saquon Barkley, obviously, is the best player on the team. Lane Johnson, one of the best tackles in the whole entire league. Best defensive players, Jalen Carter and Zach Bond. The X factor is really just going to be this team just needs to stay healthy, and the new pieces need to step up on defense. I do think this year the defense is not going to be as good as it was last year, but it's still going to be one of the better defenses in the league. Like, I don't see this team falling anywhere close to the middle of the pack. I mean, maybe, 10 to 12 at the most. I just think they do such a good job drafting. I think a lot of these young players have been getting partial or halftime roles last year in the defense. They're not coming in and stepping in fresh out of the gate and being like, oh, go out there and play 200 or whatever, hundreds of snaps, right? They're guys that have already been getting playing time being layered into this defense. So this defense is still going to be good. This offense is still going to be really good. They're arguably one of the most balanced teams in the league. So as long as they can keep the run established, it takes a lot of pressure off Jalen Hurts. This is not a team, consistently anyways, they're going to sit back and just hang back and throw the ball. But when your skill position players are as good as this team is, and the offensive line, more importantly, is as good as this offensive line is, it just makes it so the margin of error and the amount of time you have to develop stretches of plays it's just so much easier to manage. You have so much more time and to place the ball or hand the ball off to a lot of different just high-level targets. I mean, the team is stacked on both sides of the ball. Do they get back to the Super Bowl? It's tough. I say 50-50 chance to get back to the Super Bowl, which is a lot higher than most teams. By far and away, I do believe this is still the best roster in football right now. I think depending on how these young defenders play throughout the first half of the season is the only thing that could possibly change that. So as long as Jalen Hurts, doesn't make bad decisions with the football, this team's going to be right back on track and be in the mix to go back to the Super Bowl. So Philadelphia Eagles, number 21. These are my NFL power rankings. I'm going to come back quarterly to adjust my power rankings. I'm super excited to get the season started. Let me know in the comments section how you guys feel about these power rankings. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback. And let me know what you guys think about the year. What teams you think are going to rise and fall, and things of that nature. I know I've said it a few different times. I'm hoping to actually post and make more content. We're getting close to the winter, so I'm not going to be, out doing other things and stuff like that. And I've got some ideas and things cooked up that, I want to post, maybe do a few more podcasts here and there with the guys and have some guests on and that sort of thing. So if you guys really like the content, please like and subscribe. Let me know your opinions on these teams. I would really love to hear from you. Love you all. Later.